Hey everyone. So a friend of mine just got a 1911, and the breakdown, he was talking about how cleaning it is still a little confusing, and so I wanted to show just a basic field strip of a 1911 pistol. This is the Colt. You've seen it on one of my videos before, but great gun and pretty standard as far as a government full-size 1911 with a standard recoil system. So we'll talk about that kind of first. This is also a Series 80, so Series 70, there's one part you don't have to worry about on here, but everything else is the same. So for the full-size guns, first thing you do is make sure the gun is clear, and you can't see because of the shadows, but it is. Cock the gun to the rear, and what you're going to do is safety on, stand it up on end, like so. Stand it up on end like so. You're going to push in right here on this recoil plug and push the bushing sideways. Now the plug will come off. You pull that out, keep the spring on. Sometimes the plug will just come straight off and sometimes it'll come loose, but what this will allow you to do is pull your slide back. There we go. Okay. It'll allow you to pull your slide back. Now you're going to line up this little nub that little nub right there with this little spot on the frame. So safety off, it's going to come up right here, and then you're going to push out from the opposite side your slide pin. Now your whole slide can come off the front. From here you have two halves of the gun for a field strip. Most of the work you're going to do is on the slide, but let's just take a look at the frame while we're at it. So again, this is a standard GI style frame. So you have a two-piece feeder amp right here. It's also the Series 80. So you have this little lifter right here. This little lifter. Now don't pull the trigger when you don't have a slide on the gun. That little lifter right here comes up when you pull the trigger, and that actuates. That actuates that little piece right there, that little nub inside the slide, and that allows the firing pin to go forward. For here, the only stuff you're going to do is you're going to clean the rails, and then if you have a little grease, again, when the slide is up like this, I like to put the safety on, but take a little grease. Put a little bit right here on this disconnector, just a tiny little drop, and then a little bit down here between the hammer and in this little seam, in this little crack. I like to put a little bit on the surface right here because the barrel sits there, and then just a little dab. You don't need a lot on the inside of the rails. Really don't need a lot here. Some guns run better with it, but that's it. And you're going to work this in later. Definitely don't let your hammer smack down on the frame here, but that's fine where it is. And then the piece that you're going to spend most of the time on is your slide. So disassembly the slide is pretty straightforward. You take your recoil guide rod out the back. Your barrel is a little different, so you've got this little link right here, and that little link has to go forward. And then your bushing right here twists to the opposite side, so if you're looking at the front of the gun, it should be about the 4 o'clock position, and then push your barrel forward and the bushing will come off with the barrel. Depending on how tightly your gun is fit, this might be a really tight fit, it might be loose. The bushing and the barrel interface is pretty tight. So what I like to do first is I'll work on the barrel. If I have to clean that, this one's pretty clean. If I have to clean it, I'll clean up kind of around this area, the feed ramp specifically. I'll make sure this link is moving freely. This should actually be kind of loose. And I'll clean up the bore of the gun. When it comes to lube, I have a little grease on here already, but I'll put a little dab on each of these. That one dab that I put was enough for both, each of those lockup areas. And I'll put a little bit right up on the front of the barrel, because that's where this bushing is going to go. And I'll put the bushing on there and just put it off to the side. Your guide rod, little mini guide rod and recoil spring, don't need any kind of maintenance whatsoever. Clean off the dirt and then replace the spring as necessary, probably about every 3,000 rounds. I have a Wilson Combat recoil buffer on here. That's fine. When it comes to your slide, there's not much you have to do, but you should, at very minimum, make sure your breech face, so that area inside of here, and your extractor, which is, you can see it right here. Right there is your extractor. Make sure that's clean. Now if you need to, take a little scraper or a toothpick and clean out any gunk or carbon from there. Your breech face should be clean. That was not very clean. Breech face should be relatively clean. But if you scrape it or brush it, make sure you do it upside down. You don't want any kind of grease or anything inside this firing pin area. Any kind of grease or gunk can cause the firing pin to, let's force it, to protrude and get stuck outside of that breech face. You can't really see it there, but it could cause it to get stuck outside of the breech face, and then you'll get what's called a slam fire. So your firing pin sticks out, and as the slide closes on a live round, it'll fire. Not common, but it can happen. So you just want to keep this area free of lubrication. Put it back together, pretty simple and straightforward. Take your barrel, put it back in the front of the slide. Again, your recoil bushing has to be about the 4 o'clock position, looking at it. And then I like to put it back to about the 8 o'clock position to kind of lock it in place. Also in your barrel, I forgot this, put a little bit of lube on the very back where the barrel hood locks up to the breech face. Here's where it gets a little tricky. Your recoil spring, your guide rod go in from the back here, and then your bushing goes up. Now, if your safety's on, it's got to be off. If you have a Series 80, this little lifter right here has a tendency to fall open like so if you put the gun upside down. You're going to have to keep that up. I like to put a little grease in there sometimes, but you may have to be careful with that. So your link is up. You're going to put this slide together like this onto the frame onto the slide, I mean. Then here, if you're getting stuck here, check that lifter. Pop it closed. Let it go all the way forward. There you go. Okay. So now, you're going to have to work it around. There we go. Until you can see the link right here. You can see it's kind of there. There it is. So what I like to do is I like to take that and just put it in once the link is all set. And I'll put the slide fully forward, safety on, make sure everything's still kind of lined up. Then from here, I will take safety off, bring it to the back. And here's the hard part. This little plunger is really stiff. A little plunger right there has to slide in. And you have to get this little piece on. So what I like to do is I like to make sure, one, this is all lined up, so you should see this little lobe right there sitting up right above the slot. And then get right about here-ish, and you have to kind of force it in. Sometimes you can take a knife and push that plunger in, but it worked just fine here. If you rotate it up, you can scratch your frame here. Then I put the safety on. Can't really see because I'm zoomed way in still. Recoil plug on. Push it in. Be really careful because this could shoot across the room. Rotate. And here you go. You're back together. Check for function. Make sure your safeties still work. So thumb safety down. Thumb safety down. Grip safety not depressed. You should have no fire. Thumb safety on. Grip safety depressed. No fire. Both off. Make sure you're empty. Fire. And then check your reset. That's it. Disassembled, reassembled Colt 1911. Also works for most other government-sized 1911s. It gets very different if you have a full-length guide rod. That's all. Full-length guide rod. There you go. Out of frame. See you guys.